In a historic and completely unexpected political pivot that has stunned international observers, something impossible just happened. The African Union, an organization that for over a year treated Burkina Faso with suspicion, cold silence, has just paid an official visit to the land of upright men. They didn't come to deliver more sanctions nor to preach about Western defined norms. They came because they had no other choice. For over a year, Captain Ibrahim Traoré has stood like a fortress against waves of external pressure, foreign interference, and calculated internal destabilization campaigns. He was the man the traditionalists wanted to fail. He was the leader the global powers hoped would be brief footnote in history. Yet, while the elite circles in Addis Ababa and Paris were busy drafting condemnations, Traoré was busy winning the only currency that actually matters, the overwhelmingly fierce grassroots support of his own people. Now, for the first time, the African Union, once critical, once hesitant, once the primary judge of its transition, has come knocking on the door of Ouagadougou. And what they witnessed on the ground and what they heard directly from Captain himself hasn't just forced them to reconsider their stance. It has sent a literal shockwave through every capital city on this continent. This isn't just a news report. This is the story of a defiant nation, a leader who refused to be misunderstood, and the painful necessary awakening of an entire continent. Let's look at the history, because the context is where the truth hides. Since Captain Ibrahim Traoré took the mantle in 2022, Burkina Faso has been the center of a fierce global debate. The African Union, following the lead of many international bodies, initially did what it always does. It reached for the democracy handbook. They cited concerns over democratic norms. They talked about the rule of the law. But let's be real. Behind that polished diplomatic language was a deep, trembling tension. The real issue wasn't norms. The real issue was Traoré's unapologetic total rejection of neo-colonial influence. He didn't just ask France to leave, he showed them the exit. He didn't just talk about dominance, he started building pan-African alliances that existed outside the Western sphere of influence. To the youth of Africa, this was a revelation. To the traditionalists within the African Union, this was radical. It was destabilizing. It was scary. As a result, Burkina Faso was silent. They faced sanctions. They were excluded from regional summits. They were under the kind of heavy scrutiny that usually breaks a small nation. But Traoré remained undeterred. He famously declared that supremacy and the welfare of his people would never be traded for a round of diplomatic applause. He bet on his people, and that bet just paid off. The turning point wasn't a sudden change of heart from the AU. It was an invitation, a conversation they could no longer avoid. This recent visit wasn't some hollow ceremonial event. It was the result of massive internal pressure from younger AU member states and reformist voices who realized that isolating Burkina Faso was only making the AU look more out of touch. After months of quiet diplomacy, an official AU delegation led by top commissioners and political affairs advisors landed in Ouagadougou. The mission was simple: understand the reality on the ground. But the core of that mission was a highly anticipated closed-door session that lasted several hours. Imagine the room. You have the bureaucratic elite on one side and a young captain in military fatigue on the other side. Traoré didn't give them a filtered presentation. He laid bare his vision. He spoke about national security reforms that actually work because they involve the people. He spoke about an agricultural revolution that aims to feed the nation without a single bag of foreign aid. He spoke about rebuilding state institutions from the bottom up, not the top down. But perhaps the most powerful moment was when he looked them in the eye and reminded the Union that Burkina Faso's struggle is Africa's struggle, that the fight for dignity and self-determination isn't a Burkinabe issue, it's a continental one. He challenged them. Is the AU a shield for the people or a tool for the powerful? The AU delegates didn't just stay in the air-conditioned hotels. They went to the dust. They went to the fields. Over the next 48 hours, they toured local farming cooperatives. They visited community defense projects. They walked through infrastructure sites and newly developed educational centers. And what they saw was a total contradiction to the failed state narrative being pushed by international media. They saw raw rural communities that were once plagued by terror now thriving under a community-based security model. They saw local farms producing massive surpluses because the government finally provided land, seeds, and training instead of just promises. They saw roads, hospitals, and schools under construction. And here's the kicker. They were being built by Burkinabe engineers, not foreign contractors. They saw women-led enterprises and youth centers bustling with a kind of energy you can't fake for a visiting delegation. This wasn't a Potemkin village. This was a country coming back to life. At the close of the visit, the head of the AU delegation stood at a press conference and said the words that changed the trajectory of the year. He admitted, "We came with skepticism, but we leave with admiration." He stated that Traore hasn't just stabilized the country. He is building a model of African-centered governance that deserves to be supported. That single declaration sent ripple effects across the continent. The same African Union that once considered Traore a destabilizer now sees him as a visionary. Think about the implications of this shift. First, it signals a new willingness to break away from externally dictated norms. It means we are finally starting to define progress on our own terms. Secondly, it reignites the push for a truly united Africa, one that is economically interdependent and militarily cooperative. Traore's emphasis on food autonomy and local manufacturing is no longer just a Burkinabe dream. It's a blueprint for any African country seeking to exit the cycle of dependency. Already, we are seeing debates in parliaments across the continent. Opposition parties are pointing to Burkina Faso and asking their own leaders, if they can do it under sanctions and war, why can't we do it in peace? But more than any institution, it is the youth who have truly felt this shift. Traore has transitioned from being the leader of a nation to becoming a symbol of generational revolt against the status quo. This visit might actually be the catalyst that forces the African Union to evolve. For decades, it has been accused of being a slow, detached, bureaucratic club of kings. By engaging with Burkina Faso, they've taken a massive step towards representing the everyday citizen. There are already rumors of joint development initiative focused on rural transformation and defense technology. Also, there's talk of Ouagadougou hosting a Pan-African Youth Forum. The ice hasn't just cracked, it has melted. Captain Ibrahim Traoré once stood alone. He was criticized, cornered, and sidelined by the very institutions that now seek his counsel. His journey is a testament to what happens when vision meets resilience. It's a testament to what happens when a leader actually believes in his people. The African Union's visit was more than just a diplomatic event. It was a reckoning. It was a validation, and perhaps it is the dawn of a new era where African leaders who dare to chart their own paths are no longer sidelined, they are celebrated. Burkina Faso has emerged not as a pariah but as a pioneer. As the dust settles from this historic week, one truth remains unshakable. Africa is waking up, and how even the African Union has realized it has to catch up. Stay tuned to Power and Pulse, because this story and this revolution is far from over.